The Steffi Graf Stadium in Berlin. June 18, 2026. The grass is immaculate. The crowd is on its feet. And a 21-year-old from Kazakh city has just done something that no one saw coming. She has beaten Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. The reigning Australian Open champion. The former Wimbledon champion. A player who had dismantled her just weeks earlier in Rome, 6-4, 6-3, sending a clear message that the young Filipina was not ready for the big stage. But this was Berlin. And this was different. The scoreline read 7-5, 6-4. Straight sets. A demolition of the world number 2 on her preferred surface. Grass? The surface where Rybakina had built her reputation as one of the most dangerous players on the tour. Rybakina fired 13 aces, won 81% of her first serves. And still, it wasn't enough. Eala converted 3 of her 7 breakpoint opportunities and won 70.4% of points on Rybakina's second serve. She was clinical. She was ruthless. She was unstoppable. But then came the moment that would leave the tennis world stunned. Not the victory itself. Not the upset. But what happened next? Alexandra Eala, the Filipina sensation, who had just pulled off the biggest win of her grass-court career, did something that no one expected. She picked up her phone. She made a call. And in that moment, the world saw something it had never seen before: raw, unfiltered emotion. "I called my dad," she said, her voice trembling. "I just said, oh my God. We were just screaming, and my mom was there too. I'm just really happy." The tennis world was stunned. Not by the victory, but by the vulnerability. The humanity. The reminder that behind the rankings, behind the headlines, behind the hype, there is a young woman who is still processing the magnitude of what she has achieved. "I am a little foggy right now," she admitted. "I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point." 2. Words hung in the air like a confession. A window into the soul of a champion who had just done the unthinkable. And the WTA, the fans, the entire tennis world, was left speechless. This is the story of that moment. This is the story of a young woman who, in the span of a single post-match interview, reminded us all what it truly means to be human. Let's begin. The Berlin Tennis Open. A WTA 500 event. One of the premier grass-court tournaments of the season. The draw was stacked. The world's best had gathered to fine-tune their games before Wimbledon. And in the midst of it all was Alexandra Eala, a wild-card entrant who had no business being there. Or so the critics said. Eala had arrived in Berlin ranked 35th in the world. She had started the year ranked 33rd, slipped to 37th, and then clawed her way back up. She had won her second WTA 125 title at Birmingham on June 7, a hard-fought victory that had added 76 crucial points to her total. She had proven that her breakthrough at Miami was no fluke, but Berlin was different. Berlin was a step up. A WTA 500 event with a draw that included the best players in the world. And Eala's path to the quarterfinals was anything but easy. Her first opponent was Donna Vekic. The Croatian veteran had just won the biggest title of her career at Queen's Club, defeating former US Open champion Emma Raducanu in the final. The victory had catapulted Vekic 43 spots up the rankings. She was confident. She was hungry. And she was looking for revenge. But Eala had other plans. The match was a battle. Vekic fought hard, but Eala's resilience proved too much. She won 7-5, 6-4, a victory that showcased her fighting spirit and her ability to perform under pressure. "I told myself that she's fighting back, but I'm also a fighter," Eala said in her on-court interview. "So I have to try. I have to try and give her a hard time." The victory set up a showdown with Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. The reigning Australian Open champion. The former Wimbledon champion. A player who had beaten Eala in straight sets just weeks earlier at the Italian Open, the tennis world expected a repeat of Rome. A routine victory for the world number 2. Another lesson for the young Filipina. Another reminder that there are levels to this game, but the tennis world was wrong. The match began with a roar from the crowd. The Steffi Graf Stadium, usually a neutral venue, had transformed into a sea of Filipino flags. The support for Eala was deafening. It was the kind of atmosphere that rattles opponents, that makes them question their own abilities, that forces them to confront the reality that they are no longer playing against just one player, but against an entire nation. Rybakina, to her credit, did not crumble under the noise. She had played in front of hostile crowds before. She had won Grand Slams. She had beaten the best players in the world. She was not going to be intimidated by a few flags and some loud cheers, and she proved it early. Rybakina came out firing. Her serves were thundering. Her ground strokes were devastating. She raced to a 4-1 lead, leaving Eala scrambling. The Kazakh had 13 aces in the match, a testament to her power and precision. It looked like the script was following the same plot as Rome. But Eala refused to back down. "I think you have to give yourself grace, while also being brave when facing a heavy server," Eala would later say. And that's exactly what she did. She absorbed Rybakina's power and returned it with interest. She started dictating points. She started moving forward, taking the ball early, putting pressure on the Wimbledon champion. The momentum shifted. Eala won 3 games to pull level at 4-4, then reeled off another 3 consecutive games after Rybakina surged ahead at 5-4 to clinch the opening set. The crowd erupted. The Filipino flags waved. And Eala had sent a clear message to the world number 2. This was not going to be a repeat of Rome. The second set was similarly tight. Rybakina held serve to start, 1-0, only to witness Eala mount a 4-2 advantage. Eala's composure was unshakable. She was clinical. She was ruthless. She was unstoppable. The final point came on a backhand error by Rybakina. Eala let out a huge roar in celebration. The Steffi Graf Stadium held its breath. And then erupted. Alexandra Eala had done the unthinkable. She had stunned Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. The Wimbledon champion. The player who had beaten her so easily just weeks earlier. The scoreline read 7-5, 6-4. Straight sets. A victory that matched her career best win by ranking. A victory that marked her 5th career top 10 victory, all in straight sets, with 4 of those coming against top 5 opponents. But the real story was just beginning. The cameras were rolling. The microphones were live. And Alexandra Eala, still processing what she had just accomplished, walked over to the on-court interviewer. Andrea Petkovic, the former player turned broadcaster, was waiting, but before Eala could speak, she did something that no one expected. She pulled out her phone. She made a call. And in that moment, the world saw something it had never seen before. "I called my dad," the beaming 21-year-old said in her on-court interview. "I just said, oh my God. We were just screaming, and my mom was there too. I'm just really happy." The words were simple. But the emotion behind them was profound. Here was a young woman who had just beaten the second best player in the world, and her first instinct was to call her parents. To share the moment with the people who had believed in her from the very beginning. The people who had sacrificed everything so she could chase her dream. "I am a little foggy right now," Eala admitted. "I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point, too." The tennis world was stunned. Not by the victory, but by the vulnerability. The humanity. The reminder that behind the rankings, behind the headlines, behind the hype, there is a young woman who is still processing the magnitude of what she has achieved. The moment resonated with fans across the globe. Social media exploded with reactions. Valid reaction, Alex. "We get you, girl," one user posted. Others expressed pride in the Filipina star's determination throughout the contest. Some reactions were simple expressions of shock, but the most powerful reaction came from those who understood what this moment meant. For a young woman who had left her family at the age of 12 to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, who had sacrificed her childhood for a dream, who had been told she didn't belong, who had been fined, overlooked, and doubted at every turn, this phone call was more than just a celebration. It was a victory lap. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. "I'm really happy with today, of course," Eala said. "It could have gone either way, but it didn't go either way. It went Eala's way." And in that moment, the world saw what happens when a dream becomes reality. The phone call was just the beginning. What came next would leave the tennis world even more stunned. Andrea Petkovic asked Eala about the match. About the comeback. About what it took to beat one of the best players in the world on her preferred surface. And Eala's response was nothing short of remarkable. "I think you have to give yourself grace, while also being brave when facing a heavy server," she said. "And I think for me, returning and my game in general, a highlight word would be to be brave. And it makes a big difference when I'm able to do that, grace. Bravery." Two words that captured everything about Alexandra Eala's journey. Grace in the face of adversity, bravery in the face of fear. And the wisdom to know that both are needed to achieve greatness. But it was what she said next that truly stunned the WTA. "She's the one to beat," Eala said of Rybakina. "So I'm happy to have been able to share the court with her again." The words hung in the air. She is the one to beat. Eala had just beaten the world number 2. She had just pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the year. And yet, she was praising her opponent. She was acknowledging Rybakina's greatness. She was showing the kind of humility that is rare in professional sports. "She's an amazing player," Eala continued. "I think there were really tight moments in both sets. The contrast could not have been more stark. Here was a young woman who had just achieved the impossible, and she was deflecting credit. She was acknowledging that the match could have gone either way. She was showing the kind of grace that champions are made of." The WTA, the fans, the entire tennis world, was left speechless. Not just by the victory, but by the way Eala carried herself in the aftermath. She had shown that she was not just a great tennis player. She was a great human being. And in that moment, the tennis world realized something. Alexandra Eala was not just the future of tennis. She was the present. And she was here to stay. The victory over Elena Rybakina was not just a win. It was a statement. It was a declaration that Alexandra Eala was ready for the biggest stage of them all. The implications of the victory were immediate. Eala climbed 4 spots in the live WTA rankings, moving from number 35 to number 31. She overtook Emma Raducanu in the process. She was now just 2 spots off her career-high ranking. And she was closing in on the top 30, but the victory was about more than rankings. It was about belief. It was about validation. It was about showing the world that Alexandra Eala was not a flash in the pan. She was a star. And she was only getting started. Eala's victory also had significant implications for Wimbledon. The seeding cutoff was June 22, and her performance in Berlin had given her a crucial boost. A seed at Wimbledon would give Eala a protected placement in the draw, avoiding the top seeds until at least the 3rd round. It would be a transformative moment in her career. The victory also marked Eala's 2nd win over a world number 2 player. She had previously stunned Iga Swiatek at the Miami Open in 2025. Now, she had done it again. She had proven that her Miami run was no fluke. She had proven that she could beat the best players in the world on any surface. But perhaps the most significant impact of Eala's victory was the inspiration it provided. Her emotional post-match comments, her phone call to her parents, her words of grace and bravery, had resonated with millions, For the Philippines, the victory was a moment of national pride. A young girl from Quezon City had beaten the world number 2. She had made history. She had inspired millions. For Eala, the victory was a step towards a much bigger goal. She wanted to win Grand Slams. She wanted to be the best player in the world. And she was willing to work for it, to sacrifice for it, to fight for it. "I'm really happy with today," Eala said. And she had every right to be. But as she walked off the court, there was a sense that this was just the beginning. The quarterfinals awaited. Elena Svitolina, the world number 8, was next. And beyond that, the possibility of a showdown with Aryna Sabalenka loomed. The victory over Elena Rybakina at the Berlin Open was a milestone. A moment that would be remembered for years to come. A moment that announced to the world that Alexandra Eala was here, she was ready, and she was not going anywhere. And that, my friends, is how a 21-year-old from Quezon City walked onto the grass of Berlin and stunned the Wimbledon champion. Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. A player who had beaten her just weeks earlier. But this time, it was different. This time, Alexandra Eala refused to lose. This time, she played with the heart of a champion. And when it was over, she didn't celebrate alone. She called her dad. She screamed with joy. She showed the world what it truly means to be human. This is the rise of Alexandra Eala. This is history in the making. And trust me, this is only the beginning.